My husband announced he booked our 10-year anniversary trip. Then came the smirk. Serafina is joining us in the Hamptons. It's just work, so don't make things weird. He doesn't know I've already seen his real plans a connecting room for his ex, and he definitely doesn't know I used my own card to book the presidential suite for someone else entirely. My name is Maya, and I am 36 years old. Our penthouse on the Upper East Side is silent on Tuesdays. It is a calculated silence, manufactured by triple-glazed windows that reduce the sounds of Manhattan to a distant, theoretical hum. I stood in the kitchen, a cavern of black marble and high-gloss chrome, looking down on Central Park. The trees, so vibrant from the ground, looked like a flat, dark green rug from this height. My wine glass was sweating. I watched a single bead of condensation slide down the stem, cold and perfect, leaving a wet ring on the spotless counter. I did not wipe it away. It was the only thing in the room that felt real. From the island behind me, Liam cleared his throat. He was 39, an executive vice president at Ethelred Capital, and a man who had not truly looked at me in at least 2 years. I added Serafina to the Hamptons trip, he said. The sound was flat, sterile, absorbed instantly by the stone and glass. He did not look up from his iPad, his thumb swiping rhythmically across the screen. The drop of water on my glass reached the bottom. I felt it, a tiny, cold impact against my fingers. I did not turn around. I kept my back to him, focusing on the distant lights of the city just beginning to blur in the twilight. The trip was meant to be for our 10-year anniversary. The company needs her there, he continued, the casual tone designed to preempt an argument. It's just work. I waited. I knew the final blow was coming. It always did. Don't make things weird. Maya, be an adult about it. There it was. The implication that any feeling I might have, humiliation, anger, betrayal, was childish, immature, weird. The air in the kitchen grew tight, pressing against my eardrums. I could feel the cold radiating from the marble floor, seeping into my feet. For a full 10 seconds, the only sound was the electronic click of his iPad. I turned slowly. I had rehearsed this expression in the mirror so many times it was now reflex. The smile was bright, accommodating, and utterly empty. The perfect corporate wife, optimized for social gatherings and swallowing insults. Of course, darling, I said. My voice was smooth, light. Whatever the company needs. Liam finally looked up, offering me a tight, satisfied smirk. He believed he had managed the situation. He believed I was precisely what he had engineered me to be, a beautiful, placid accessory who understood her role. He nodded once, dismissing me, and pushed himself up from the stool. Good. I'm going to shower, he announced, walking toward the bedroom. I listened to the sound of his footsteps on the hardwood, the heavy click of the master bedroom door sealing him away. A moment later, the distant rush of water began. I remained still until the sound of the shower was a steady white noise. Then, the smile dissolved. My face felt numb. I walked back to the island, past his discarded iPad, and opened my own laptop. He was right. I was being an adult about it. I did not need to guess about the trip. I had known for 3 weeks. I navigated to a secure, encrypted folder. Inside was the email confirmation I had retrieved from the deepest layer of his permanently deleted trash folder on our shared cloud account. He was careless. He thought I was stupid. I read the lines again, letting the words burn. He had booked our anniversary trip. For me, a Garden View king. I knew that resort. Garden View meant overlooking the kitchen exhaust fans and the parking lot. Then, the main booking, an oceanfront villa for himself, and for Serafina. I scanned down to the special requests section, the text typed by my husband's own hand, requesting adjoining door access between villa and second room. Please confirm. He was not just bringing his mistress. He was booking them a conjoined suite and putting his wife in a different building. The audacity of it was breathtaking, a cold, sharp stab beneath my ribs, but the rage had passed weeks ago. Now, there was only a cold, hard clarity. I closed that window. I opened a new one, pulling up my own confirmation email. The logo for the same Hamptons resort shimmered at the top. The dates were identical. The room type was different. I had booked the presidential suite, the largest, the highest, the most opulent room they had, with a private terrace and a view that would swallow the ocean. I had used my own credit card, the one he did not know existed, tied to an account I had opened the day I found his first text message to her. I looked at the confirmation name. The booking was not for Maya. It was not for Liam. It was for Mr. and Mrs. Thorne. I remember the man I fell in love with, or at least, the man I thought he was. I was 26, a senior strategist at one of the top PR firms in the city, and I was good. I was fast. I was sharp, and I was making a name for myself. Liam was the rising star of Ethelred Capital, the kind of man who commanded a room just by walking into it. We met at a benefit gala I had organized. He didn't just ask for my number. He told me he wouldn't leave until I agreed to have dinner with him. The pursuit was relentless, a full-scale shock and awe campaign. It wasn't just dinner. It was tasting menus at restaurants with 3-month waiting lists. It was front-row seats at the Philharmonic. It was spontaneous weekend trips, him whisking me away on a private jet to Paris just for coffee. He'd say with that intoxicating, confident smile. He flooded my senses until I couldn't think straight. He made me feel like the only person in the world. The control began so subtly I mistook it for care. It started with my work. I was handling a crisis for a major client, working late for a week straight. He showed up at my office at 10 p.m. in a town car, a cashmere blanket in hand. "You don't need to work this hard, my love," he murmured, rubbing the tension from my shoulders. "I've got us. Why stress yourself out?" At first, I brushed it off. I loved my job, but he was persistent. After we got married, the pressure mounted. "That little firm of yours is stressful. Maya, you're always on edge." He'd frame it as a gift. "Why don't you quit? You could focus on us, on our life." He convinced me to leave my career to manage our social investments. It sounded important, official. It was a beautiful, hollow phrase that meant my new job was to be the perfect hostess, to arrange the dinners, to charm his colleagues, to manage the staff, and to be a flawless reflection of his success. My sharp mind, the one he claimed to have fallen in love with, was now tasked with selecting floral arrangements and approving canapes. Our home was his, never ours. I had loved my pre-war apartment, full of worn wood, colorful textiles, and shelves overflowing with books. This penthouse was his statement: cold, minimalist, a shrine of chrome, black glass, and gray marble. There were no photographs, no clutter, no warmth. My own belongings were relegated to a single closet, as if my past had been neatly packed away. When I tried to add a colorful painting or a comfortable chair, he would smile patiently and say, "It just doesn't fit the aesthetic, darling." The isolation was just as methodical. My old friends, the loud, ambitious women from my PR days, didn't fit the aesthetic either. After a few awkward dinners where Liam subtly patronized their careers, they stopped calling. "You've changed, Maya." One of them told me over a lunch I had to schedule 3 months in advance. "It's like you're playing a part." I was offended at the time. Now, I knew she was right. They faded, replaced by the wives of his colleagues, women who spoke only of schools they'd never send children to and vacations they'd never enjoy. And then there was Serafina, his work wife, as he laughingly introduced her. She was always there, at our apartment for strategy meetings on Sundays, joining our dinners, her presence a constant, sharp perfume in the air. She was everything I was no longer a shark in a designer suit, her eyes always fixed on Liam. She was the architect of my isolation's finishing touches. Her comments were masterpieces of passive aggression, delivered with a sympathetic smile. "You're so lucky you don't have to deal with the real world. Maya," she'd say, sipping my wine. I wish I could just spend my day at Pilates and planning parties. It must be so relaxing. She painted me as a kept woman, a fragile ornament, while positioning herself as his true partner, the only one who understood the pressures he faced. Liam, of course, ate it up. He'd laugh and pat my hand. She's right. I'm glad I could give you that. Baby. It took me years to see the full picture, to look at my beautiful, silent, empty life and understand what had happened. I wasn't his partner. I wasn't his wife. I was his most valuable, most carefully managed asset. I was the ultimate status symbol, the smart, successful woman he had been powerful enough to tame, to domesticate, to put on display in his cold, glass cage. And he had used his work wife to help him turn the key. The crack in the mirror, the first hairline fracture in the perfect life I was reflecting, appeared 3 weeks ago. It was a Wednesday. Liam had just left for a late dinner with the board. I was in his office, looking for a book on Japanese gardens he'd bought me, a prop for my role as a woman of leisurely hobbies. His laptop was open on the desk. This was not unusual. He was arrogant in his security, convinced I was too technologically inept to be a threat. As I walked past, the screen lit up. A blue iMessage banner slid into view from the top right corner. Sender Sarah. The message, the anniversary trip will be the perfect time to tell her. Did you double-check the prenup? My heart didn't stop. It felt like it was instantly encased in ice, a heavy, cold weight in my chest. I stood frozen, my hand hovering over the book I'd been reaching for. The air left my lungs in a silent, painful rush. I did not touch the mouse. I did not breathe. I just read the words again and again. Tell her. Prenup. My blood, which had been frozen, began to move again, but it was a cold, slow sludge. I placed my hands on his keyboard. My fingers were trembling, but I forced them steady. I clicked the message banner. The entire history opened up. Months. Years. I scrolled up. It was not just an affair. It was not just furtive meetings and cheap lust. This was a long-form, calculated conspiracy. This was text after text of them laughing at me, planning, scheming. I scrolled and scrolled, the words blurring into a nauseating litany of my own failure. Pictures of them in hotel rooms I recognized from our own vacations. Jokes about the dinners I hosted, the clothes I wore, and then, the logistics. Liam's reply to her message was right there. Checked. The 5-year clause. She files first. She gets nothing but a one-time payout. She was too trusting to read the fine print. Too trusting. I had been, my father, a litigator who trusted no one, had warned me. But I had been in love, overwhelmed by the Paris trips and the avalanche of his charm. I had barely glanced at the document his lawyers put in front of me. Sarah's reply, "Good. I can't wait to be with you without pretending to be nice to your little housewife." Little housewife. The title they had assigned me, the role they had crafted for me, the pain, the sharp, visceral agony of betrayal, lasted for perhaps 30 seconds. It was a white-hot flash that seared my insides, and then it was gone. It was replaced by something else, an emptiness so profound it was almost peaceful, a cold, clear, arctic void. They had not just stolen my future, they were actively mocking my past, rewriting every memory, every shared smile, every "I love you" as a scene from a dark, cruel farce. I kept scrolling, my mind now working with a chilling, analytical detachment. I was no longer a wife. I was an investigator. And then I found it. A message from Liam, sent 2 months prior. She's becoming suspicious about the Hamptons trip, I think, but it doesn't matter. After she lost most of her father's inheritance in that merger, she'll have nothing left to fight me with. My fingers went numb. The merger. 2 years ago. Liam had come to me with an unbelievable opportunity. A small, innovative tech firm was about to be acquired by a larger entity. "It's a sure thing. Maya, he'd said, his voice full of that false, earnest enthusiasm. Your father's money is just sitting there in those boring index funds. You could triple it. This is how the real players build wealth. He called it my investment, a way for me to be in the game again. I had been so grateful, so desperate to feel relevant. I invested nearly everything my father had left me, 80% of my independent wealth. 6 weeks later, the deal collapsed. The tech firm was a vaporware shell. The acquisition was a fantasy. My investment was wiped out. Gone. Liam had been so convincing in his sympathy. He held me while I cried, telling me it was the cost of playing the game, that it wasn't my fault, that it was just a bad break. He assured me, I've got us, baby. You'll never have to worry. I looked at his message again. She'll have nothing left to fight me with. It wasn't a bad tip. It wasn't a risk. It wasn't a bad break. It was a plan. He had steered me into that fraudulent merger. He had systematically, deliberately, and with a comforting smile, stripped me of my own resources. He had liquidated my only escape route, ensuring that when he finally decided to dump his little housewife, I would be trapped, penniless, and entirely at his mercy. The ice in my chest solidified into something hard and sharp as a diamond. He had not just taken my money. He had used my father's legacy, the last tangible piece of the man who had adored me, as fuel for his escape plan with his mistress. I did not cry. I did not scream. I methodically took my phone, opened the camera, and, starting from the very first message I could find, I began to take pictures of every single screen. That night, I did not sleep. I waited, motionless in the dark, listening to the rhythm of Liam's breathing beside me. It was deep, even, untroubled. The sleep of a man who believed he had won, who believed he was smarter than everyone else in the world. At 2 a.m., when the city outside our soundproof windows was finally descending into a deeper quiet, I slipped out of the bed. I did not turn on a light. I moved through the cold, chrome and glass expanse of our apartment, a ghost in my own home. His office was at the far end of the hall. The door clicked open silently. I walked to the large minimalist painting behind his desk, a frantic collection of black and gray slashes that he'd paid a fortune for. I pushed the bottom left corner. A panel clicked, revealing the keypad of his personal safe. Liam was a creature of profound, predictable narcissism. The code, he had told me once in a moment of drunken sentimentality, was the birthday of his first dog, Buster. The only thing he'd ever truly loved, 81490. The numbers glowed green, and the heavy steel door unlatched with a soft, expensive sigh. I ignored the stacks of cash, the glittering array of watches he kept for investment. At the very bottom, beneath a file of bearer bonds, was a thick document folder bound in dark blue leather. Marital Agreement Bain and Thorn. I took it to his desk and switched on the small, green-shaded banker's lamp. It had been my father's. It was the only object in the entire penthouse that I had insisted on keeping, and Liam had allowed it as a quaint, sentimental accessory. Tonight, its focused pool of light felt like an interrogation. My hands were perfectly steady. I turned the thick, watermarked pages. I found the section he had mentioned in his texts to Sarah. Clause 5. Asset distribution. Upon dissolution. Years 1 through 5. He was right. It was a vicious, ironclad clause. If I initiated a divorce within the first 5 years, I would walk away with a one-time payout so small it was insulting, forfeiting all claims to his earnings or our shared properties. It was designed to punish and to trap. But Liam, in his hubris, had only read the part that served his narrative. He had forgotten the most important detail. We were not in year 5. We were in year 10. That clause had expired half a decade ago. His entire leverage, the threat he held over me, was based on an assumption that I was too stupid or too cowed to read the date. I kept turning the pages. My father had been a litigator for 40 years. He was a man who saw the worst in people and planned accordingly. He had hated Liam, and as I read, I could almost hear his voice, dry and precise, in the text. I found it. Clause 12. B. Honesty bond provision. Liam's lawyers had laughed at it. They called it antiquated and unenforceable. But my father had refused to sign the agreement without it. The language was a masterpiece of legal destruction. It stipulated that if either party was found to have engaged in willful financial deception, fraudulent representation, or a breach of fiduciary duty relating to the other party's separate premarital or inherited assets. My breath caught, resulting in demonstrable and provable financial damages. The offending party would thereby forfeit any and all claims to all joint marital property, all shared assets, and any claim whatsoever upon the personal or future assets of the injured party. They thought it was hypothetical. They thought it applied to something simple, like me hiding a bank account. They never imagined Liam would be stupid enough to breach it himself. He had not just advised me on an investment. He, my husband and a senior executive at a major financial firm, had used his position of absolute trust to guide me, his little housewife, into funneling my entire inheritance into a fraudulent shell corporation he controlled. He had committed willful textbook financial deception. He had breached his fiduciary duty in the most profound way possible. And the provable financial damages, the millions he had systematically vaporized from my accounts. I looked at the text message I had photographed on his laptop, the one stored securely in my encrypted cloud. After she lost most of her father's inheritance in that merger, she'll have nothing left to fight me with. It was not just a text. It was a signed confession. He hadn't just disarmed me. He had personally handed me the weapon, loaded it, and pointed it at his own head. Clause 12. B was not a dusty, antiquated provision. It was a silver bullet. And my father, from beyond the grave, had just given me perfect aim. I took out my phone. I laid the prenup flat under the green light, page by page. I photographed every single word, focusing on Clause 12B until the text was razor sharp. I had the motive. I had the intent. I had the weapon. But I needed the final, undeniable proof. I needed to trace the money. I had to find the link between Liam and the failed merger. I needed the bank records, the wire transfers. I needed to know exactly where my father's legacy had gone. I put the blue leather folder back. I closed the safe. I pushed the painting back into place, ensuring the lines were perfectly straight. I turned off my father's lamp. The victim had left the room. The tactician walked out. The world I had lived in, the world of charity galas, silent penthouses, and passive-aggressive wives, had no tools for this. I needed to step outside of it. My father had once represented a man who ran a discreet inquiries firm, a man my father had described, with a rare hint of admiration, as a necessary ghost. The man was long retired, but his firm remained. A single, untraceable call from a burner phone led me to a name, Geneva Russo. We met in a cafe tucked into a cobblestone side street in Brooklyn, the kind of place that smelled of old books and dark roast coffee, a million miles from the chrome and glass cage of my life. I arrived at 10 a.m., exactly as instructed. She was already there, in a back booth, partially obscured by shadow. Geneva, Jen Russo, was not what I expected. She was in her late 40s, perhaps, dressed in a simple black turtleneck and dark jeans. No makeup. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, functional knot. The only remarkable thing about her was her eyes. They were a pale, piercing gray, and they saw everything. She did not smile as I sat down. She simply watched me, her hands wrapped around a white ceramic mug. "You're Maya," she said. It was not a question. I nodded, my throat tight. I had left my corporate wife persona at home. "Thank you for meeting me." "I don't waste time," Jen said, her voice low and gravelly. "Show me what you have." There was no preamble, no sympathy. It was clinical, and it was exactly what I needed. I pushed my phone across the table, open to the encrypted folder. Then, I slid across the large manila envelope containing the hard copies of the prenup photos. She did not look at me. She picked up the phone and began to read the text messages. I watched her face. It was impassive, but her eyes moved with a frightening speed. She scrolled through weeks, then months, of betrayal in complete silence. After 2 full minutes, she set the phone down, screen side up, and opened the envelope. She pulled out the photograph of Clause 12B. She read it once. Then she read it again. "He's an executive vice president at Ethelred," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "He advised me to invest my inheritance. He used his position of trust as my husband and as a financial expert." Jen finally looked up at me. Her pale gray eyes held mine. "The texts are motive and intent. The clause is the weapon. What's the target?" "He's planning to leave me. He and his mistress think they've left me with nothing." I leaned forward, the smell of coffee grounds suddenly sharp in my nostrils. "I don't just want a divorce, Ms. Russo. I want back what he stole. I want what he took from my father." A flicker of something not quite a smile, but an understanding passed across her features. "You don't want a lawyer, not yet. You want an undertaker." "I want proof of the merger," I said. "The failed one. I need the trail that connects Liam to the shell company." Jen nodded slowly. "He didn't just cheat. Maya, he advised you to move your money into a specific opportunity. He used interstate communications texts, emails, calls to do it, and then the money vanished. He didn't just break a prenup. He committed wire fraud." She tapped the photo of Clause 12B with one clean, unmanicured fingernail. "This isn't a silver bullet. It's a nuclear bomb. But it's useless without the launch codes. I'll find them." She named her price. It was astronomical. I agreed without flinching. "I'll start digging into Ethelred and the network of shell companies involved in that tech merger," she said, gathering the photos. "It's sloppy. He's arrogant. Arrogant men leave tracks." She stood up, the meeting over. "I'll be in touch." 4 days passed. 4 days of playing the perfect, placid wife. 4 days of smiling at Liam, of discussing the Hamptons trip, of feeling my skin crawl every time he touched me. The silence from Jen was absolute. Then, on the 5th day, an encrypted email notification appeared on my burner phone. The subject line was blank. Inside was a single, password-protected file and a short message: "You'll want to see this." I locked myself in the guest bathroom, the only room in the house with no Chrome. I typed in the password. The file opened. Photographs. The first 2 were what I expected. They were grainy, long lens shots, but unmistakable. Liam and Serafina, leaving a nondescript hotel in Midtown, their faces close, her hand possessively on his chest. In the next, they were kissing. A sordid, desperate kiss against the brick wall of an alley. It was ugly, and it was the proof of infidelity I needed. But there was a third photo. My heart, which had been so cold and steady, gave a painful lurch. This photo was taken on a different night. It was outside one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. Serafina. She was wearing a stunning backless red dress. She was not with Liam. She was kissing another man, an older man, gray at the temples, radiating an aura of immense power and wealth. I stared at the image, a cold dread mixing with a new, shocking confusion. Who was this? I scrolled down. Below the photo was a single line of text from Jen. "That's Marcus Thorne, the CEO of Ethelred Capital, Liam's boss." I called Jen back using the burner. My voice was hoarse. "Who is he?" "That," Jen's voice crackled, "is the variable. We need to meet, not the cafe. I'm sending you an address. 4 p.m. The address was for a nondescript business hotel in Murray Hill, the kind of place with beige carpets and a lingering smell of industrial cleaner, designed for absolute anonymity. I paid in cash for a room on the 7th floor. At 4:05, there was a soft knock. Jen slipped inside, carrying a laptop bag. She did not sit. She went straight to the window, peering through the blinds at the street below before closing them. She turned on the television, setting it to a low, static-filled volume. "This just got complicated. Maya," she said, her back to me. She finally turned, her pale eyes flat and serious. "Sarah isn't just playing your husband. She's playing the entire kingdom." I felt a cold prickle on my arms. "What do you mean? Liam is a pawn, a useful, arrogant, blinded by lust pawn." Jen opened her laptop on the cheap laminate desk. "He's in love with her. He's desperate for her. He thinks he's the one pulling the strings, that she's his partner in crime. He's wrong. He's her cover story." She pointed to the photo of Sarah and the older man. "Marcus Thorne, married, 3 adult children, and the CEO of Ethelred Capital. He's the power. Sarah isn't sleeping with him for promotion. She's sleeping with him for access." Jen turned the laptop to face me. "You asked me to find the trail for the failed merger. I did." She clicked a key. A complex diagram of shell corporations and bank accounts filled the screen. "I got into the Ethelred servers," Jen said, her voice dropping. "It wasn't easy. They have high-level security. But arrogant men, like your husband, often have their passwords written on a sticky note. His gave me a back door." She pointed to a name in the center of the web. "This is the shell company you invested in. Innovant Solutions." It was a ghost. No assets. No product. "Liam told me." I started. "Liam told you what she told him." Jen cut me off. "This is the part you're not going to like. The failed merger wasn't Liam's plan to steal your money. It was Sarah's." I gripped the edge of the desk. The room felt like it was tilting. "Look." Jen pointed to a series of wire transfers, all dated the week after my investment. "Here's your money coming in. And here it is going out. Not to creditors. Not to cover losses. It was diverted. All of it. Redirected through 3 different offshore accounts until it landed here." She highlighted the final destination. "A hedge fund based in the Cayman Islands. A fund with only one principal. SS Capital." "SS," I whispered. "Serafina." "She designed the entire play," Jen explained, her voice a relentless, factual monotone. "She needed capital to start her own fund, but she couldn't use her own money without raising red flags. So she found a target with accessible, independent wealth. You." The pieces slammed into place with the force of a physical blow. "She used Liam," I said, the words tasting like ash. "She used his affair with her and his position as my husband to convince me to make the investment." "Correct," Jen said. "Liam was her inside man, the one who could sell you the lie. He thought he was being clever, helping her defraud his wife of a few million to fund their new life. He had no idea what the real plan was. Which, Jen said, was to use Marcus Thorne. Once Sarah had your money, she used her leverage over Marcus the affair, the threat of exposure to make sure the merger failed in precisely the right way. He was the one who personally quashed the deal, and his office was the one that approved the offshore wire transfers, burying them in a pile of unrelated quarterly write-offs. He helped her liquidate your assets and hide them. A horrifying new reality was taking shape. Liam thought he was the mastermind, stealing my inheritance to escape with his mistress. But Serafina was the true predator. She had conned Liam into being her accomplice. She had blackmailed or seduced the CEO of the entire company into being her cleaner. She had used my father's legacy as her seed money, a multi-million-dollar grub stake. Liam thought he was playing for a new life. Sarah was playing for an empire. She was defrauding her lover, her boss, and her lover's wife, all at the same time, using each of us as a weapon against the others. "She's not just an adulterer," I said, my voice shaking with a new kind of cold, clarifying rage. "She's not just a rival." I looked up at Jen, my resolve hardening from ice into steel. "She's a criminal, a major one." Jen's report settled in my stomach like a block of cement. Serafina had compromised the CEO of Ethelred Capital. This was no longer a domestic dispute. It was a high-level corporate coup, and I was the ignition capital. If I went after Liam alone, I was just a scorned wife. If I went after Serafina, I was a scorned wife attacking a high-flying executive and the CEO. They would bury me. Marcus Thorne had the power to make all of Jen's evidence, all of my proof, simply disappear. I was outgunned, and I knew it. I couldn't fight Marcus, but I knew the one person who could. I needed someone whose power was not granted by Ethelred Capital, but someone who Ethelred Capital answered to. Eleanor Thorne. Eleanor was not simply Mrs. Thorne. She was a Thorne by birth, not just by marriage. She was old money New York, a woman who sat on the board of the Met and whose family name was carved into the limestone of hospitals and libraries. And I knew, from years of listening to Liam boast about the company structure, that her family's ancestral trust held the largest single voting block of Ethelred stock. Marcus was the CEO, but Eleanor was the dynasty. I couldn't approach her directly. I couldn't call the penthouse and risk a gatekeeper swatting me away as a hysterical spouse. I had to go through a channel she respected. I used one of my last remaining connections from my PR career, a senior curator at the Frick Collection, where Eleanor was the chairwoman of the board. My message was sterile, professional, and urgent. Maya Bain. I request a meeting regarding evidence of significant internal operational misconduct at Ethelred Capital. The bait was set. It bypassed the mistress assumption and aimed directly at her power. She agreed to meet me 2 days later. At the Frick, her home turf, I found her in the garden court, sitting on a bench, surrounded by the quiet elegance of the Gilded Age. She was in her late 60s, impeccably dressed, and possessed a stillness that was more intimidating than any armor. She was polite, but her eyes were cold, assessing. "Ms. Bain," she said, not using my married name. A subtle, deliberate signal. "You have 5 minutes." "Thank you, Mrs. Thorne." I sat, my back straight. I knew this was not the time for tears or shared outrage. A woman like Eleanor would see a mistress as a distasteful, predictable problem, a threat to the family fortune. However, was a declaration of war. I started with the money. "I will not waste your time," I said. "I have reason to believe a senior executive at Ethelred, Serafina, is operating a sophisticated fraud, siphoning corporate funds." I handed her a thin file. It contained none of the iMessages. Only Jen's work, the wire transfer records, the offshore account details, the complex map of shell corporations, and the final destination, SS Capital. Eleanor's eyes, a pale, calculating blue, scanned the pages. She was not a placid, philanthropic wife. She was the daughter of a titan. She understood the data instantly. "These transfers are substantial," she said, her voice quiet. "And this hedge fund, SS Capital. You're certain it belongs to her?" "Yes." She looked up, her gaze pinning me. "This is a severe accusation, but this data suggests she had help. A fraud of this magnitude would require executive sign-off at the highest level. How did she bypass my husband?" This was the moment. The air felt thin. "She didn't bypass him." "Mrs. Thorne," I said, my voice perfectly level. "She compromised him." I let the silence stretch, the only sound the distant trickle of the fountain. "Serafina is sleeping with my husband, Liam, and she is sleeping with your husband, Marcus." The silence that followed was not one of shock. It was the absolute, crushing silence of a deep Arctic freeze. Eleanor Thorne did not flush. She did not gasp. Her posture did not change. But the faint, polite warmth in her eyes vanished, replaced by something flat and lethal. She stared at the fountain, her mind clearly processing every implication. When she finally spoke, her voice was clipped, reduced to its barest, most dangerous essence. "That girl," she said slowly, "has made 2 critical errors. She targeted my family, And she targeted my money. She closed the file. It was a judgment. She turned her icy gaze back to me. "What do you want, Ms. Bain?" "Justice," I said. "I want my father's money back, and I want them to know, truly know, what they did. I don't want them taken down by an anonymous SEC filing. I want them to see the faces of the women they destroyed." "The fraud is a matter for the board," she said. "And the betrayal is a matter for us," I countered, leaning forward. "My husband, in his infinite wisdom, is taking his mistress to the Hamptons this weekend. It's our 10-year anniversary. He's bringing her along, and he's planning to dump me." A flicker of something dark, predatory, moved in Eleanor's eyes. "I believe we should join them," I said. "A public confrontation," she mused. "It's messy." "It's contained," I corrected. "I know the resort. I know their plans. He's booked them an oceanfront villa with a connecting door. He booked me a room by the parking lot." I paused. "Mrs. Thorne, Serafina used my money to start her scheme, and your husband's power to protect it. They used us. It's time we used them." Eleanor stood up, clutching the file. The alliance was sealed. "I will handle my husband and the board. You handle your husband. And together," she said, her voice laced with venom, "we will handle her." She turned to leave the court. "One last thing, Mrs. Thorne," I called out. She stopped. "I've already booked our accommodations. I took the liberty of securing the presidential suite for the same dates." I gave her the first real smile I'd had in weeks. "I put the reservation under Mr. and Mrs. Thorne." I thought it was appropriate. For a moment, the marble statue cracked. A thin, cold smile touched Eleanor Thorne's lips. "I'll see you in the Hamptons. Maya." The days leading up to the Hamptons trip were a performance of masterful hypocrisy. Liam was in an extraordinarily good mood, buoyant with the arrogance of a man who believes he is about to get everything he has ever wanted. He was affectionate in a way he had not been in years, a light touch on my arm, a knowing smile over breakfast, all of it making my stomach turn. He was triumphant, certain he was just days away from executing his plan, shedding his old life, and starting his new one with Sarah and my money. On Thursday night, 2 days before we were set to leave, he came home with a small, dark blue box from Cartier. He presented it to me with a flourish. "For 10 wonderful years, darling," he said, his voice laced with that smooth, false sincerity I now recognized as his primary weapon. I opened it. Inside, a tennis bracelet, a perfect, glittering circle of diamonds, lay on the black velvet. It was cold and unimaginably heavy. A payment, a severance. "Liam, it's beautiful," I managed, my voice pitched to the perfect frequency of surprised delight. He clasped it around my wrist, his fingers warm against my skin. "And thank you," he added, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur, "for being so understanding about Sarah. I know it's not ideal, but it means a lot that you're being so mature about it. It makes this all so much easier. It makes this all so much easier." The diamonds felt like shackles. I raised my eyes to his, forcing the perfect corporate wife smile. "Of course, darling. I just want us to be happy. That's all that matters." He kissed me, a dry, satisfied peck on the cheek. He believed me. The next morning, I played my next card. I found him while he was drinking his coffee, the iPad already in his hand. "Liam," I said, injecting a slight tremor into my voice. "I know this is our anniversary, and I'm being silly, but I'm feeling a little emotional about the 10 years and everything. Would you mind terribly if I invited Chloe along? Just for moral support? She can get her own room." "Of course." He looked up, mildly annoyed, but then his expression softened into his familiar, patronizing smirk. My younger sister, Chloe, was, in Liam's eyes, a flighty, harmless fool. She was a vlogger, perpetually attached to her phone, obsessed with makeup and brunch. He saw her as an accessory, not a threat. "Sure, baby," he said, waving a dismissive hand. "If it makes you feel better, just try to keep her out of our hair." "Thank you," I said. "You're so good to me." I went into the guest bathroom and called Chloe. The moment she picked up, the facade dropped. "He said yes," I said, my voice flat and cold. "That bastard," Chloe's voice hissed. She had always hated Liam, from the day she met him. "That smug, patronizing bastard. Are you okay, Maya? Are you sure you can go through with this?" "I'm sure," I said. "And Chloe, the moral support story is just for him. You're my witness. You're my videographer." There was a sharp intake of breath, then a low, delighted laugh. "Oh my God, you're burning him to the ground." Yes, 1,000 times. I'll get everything. I'll pretend I'm vlogging the luxurious Hamptons lifestyle. I will get his whole stupid, shocked face when the bomb goes off. He won't even see it coming. "I know," I said. "That's why you're perfect for the part." The rest of the pieces fell into place with chilling digital precision. An encrypted message from Jen Russo. "My team is booked. 2 tables at the resort restaurant for Saturday night. They look like a pair of hedge fund guys on a golf weekend. High-definition audio and video. They will be in place by 7 p.m. An encrypted message from Eleanor Thorne. "The emergency board meeting has been called. Saturday, 9 p.m., citing evidence of severe executive malfeasance. It will be a mandatory video conference. My husband and Miss Serafina will be required to join. The motion for their immediate termination and a full forensic audit will be tabled at 9:05. My final call was to the resort's general manager, Anna Ramirez. We had been junior associates together at the same PR firm a lifetime ago, before I became Liam's social investment. She had clawed her way to the top of the luxury hotel world. "Anna, it's Maya Bain," I said, using my maiden name. "Maya," she replied, her voice warm but surprised. "It's been an age. What can I do for you?" "I have a very delicate favor, Anna, and it's a big one." I explained what I needed, not the whole story, but enough. I framed it as a surprise for my husband and his boss. She was silent for a moment. "He's putting you in a garden view," she finally said, her voice dripping with professional disdain. "While he's in an oceanfront villa, with a connecting door to his colleague," I added. The line was silent again. "Anna," I said, "I'm not asking as a friend. I'm asking as a client. I need the presidential suite, and I need to know exactly where it is in relation to his villa." "The presidential suite is in the main lodge," she said. "The villas are separate." "Then I need you to move the Thorns," I said. "Move them to the presidential suite. And I need you to personally ensure that my reservation, the one for the parking lot, is accidentally upgraded. Upgraded to the room that is directly, physically, next to the presidential suite." "And right across the hall from Liam's villa?" I heard the rapid clicking of a keyboard. "That would put you—" "Oh," she said, "that puts you all in the same private wing. You, the Thorns, and your husband's villa. All 3 doors facing each other." "That's the one," I said. "A perfect little cul-de-sac." "This is one hell of an anniversary party. Maya," she said. "It will be," I replied. A cold, satisfying calm settling over me. It's a weekend none of them will ever forget. The trap was set, the bait was in place, and the lion, my husband, was sharpening his claws, completely unaware he was already in the cage. The Hamptons' air was different. It was clean, bright, and heavy with the smell of old money and salt. It was the perfect, beautiful stage for a slaughter. The town car pulled up the long, crushed seashell driveway of the resort, a sprawling temple of cedar shingles and white linen. Liam was in high spirits, humming along to some obnoxious playlist, the victor on his way to claim his spoils. I just smiled, the diamond bracelet on my wrist feeling like a tracking device. A bellman led us, not to the main lodge, but down a brick path, past the spa, toward a less impressive wing of the hotel. I could smell the faint, greasy aroma of the kitchens. Liam used his keycard to open a door. The garden view was, as I'd suspected, a glorious panorama of the employee parking lot and a towering, humming air conditioning unit. Liam frowned, his performance beginning. "Oh, this isn't right. There must be some mistake. I'll call the desk. This is unacceptable." He was trying to look outraged on my behalf. "Mrs. Bain." A woman with a sleek black blazer and an earpiece was standing behind us. It was Anna, the general manager, my old PR colleague. She smiled, a crisp, professional expression that didn't reach her eyes. "My apologies," Anna said, her voice projecting perfectly. "There seems to have been a system error with your reservation. Your husband's assistant booked this oversight." She gave Liam a look of polite disappointment. "We have, of course, prepared your correct room. We've upgraded you to our private wing in the main lodge." Liam's manufactured outrage dissolved into genuine confusion. "Upgraded to where?" "The presidential suite was booked," Anna said, lying beautifully. "But we've placed you in the suite directly adjacent. We'll have your bags sent there immediately. Sir?" She nodded to Liam. "Your villa is ready on the ocean front." Liam looked like he'd been slapped. He had lost control. He wanted me tucked away by the dumpsters, invisible and miserable. He was now forced to explain to his mistress why I was in one of the most expensive rooms in the hotel. "Fine," he clipped. "Just fine. I'll be at the villa." He turned and stalked away without another word. I gave Anna a look. "Thank you for sorting that." "Anna." "Enjoy your stay, Maya," she said, her eyes flashing. "The wing is very exclusive." I found my sister Chloe at the terrace bar, already sipping a rosé, her phone on a small tripod, filming herself. "And scene," she whispered as I sat down. "He's rattled," I said. "Good," she replied. "Now, where is the homewrecker?" As if summoned, Serafina made her entrance. She was not a woman. She was a statement. She wore a backless white jumpsuit that was probably worth more than my first year's salary. Her sunglasses were enormous. She glided onto the terrace, scanning for Liam. Her eyes landed on me, and her perfect, surgically enhanced face curdled into a mask of pity and contempt. "Oh, Maya," she said, as if noticing a piece of lint on the chair. "You're here too. How cute." "Sarah," I said, smiling brightly. "So glad you could make it." Just then, Liam arrived from the villa, and Serafina's entire demeanor changed. She became a purring, sensual creature. "Liam, darling," she squealed, ignoring me completely. She looped her arm through his, pressing herself against his side, a public, blatant act of possession. "Hi, guys!" Chloe's voice cut through the tension like a chainsaw. She had her phone on its gimbal, sweeping it toward them. "Welcome back to my vlog. Look who it is, everyone. My brother-in-law, Liam, and... Oh, I'm sorry. Who are you?" Sarah, who had been preening for an imaginary audience, froze when she saw the camera lens. Her smile became a tight rictus. "This is Serafina," Liam said, his voice a low growl. "A colleague." "Put the phone down. Chloe." "What? No way I'm vlogging our amazing Hamptons trip. It's for my followers." Chloe was a whirlwind of weaponized idiocy. "Wow, you're so beautiful. Serafina, are you here for their 10th anniversary? Aw, that is so sweet. I just love when people are so close with their colleagues. It's just so supportive." Sarah looked like she had swallowed acid. Liam's hand was gripping Sarah's arm, his knuckles white. "We have dinner reservations at 8, he said, trying to regain control. "Try to be ready on time." He steered Sarah away, his back rigid. Chloe sat down, hit stop on her phone, and took a large sip of wine. "She's not nearly as pretty when she's furious, is she?" Dinner was the main event. We all met in the lobby, the air thick with unsaid things. Liam and Sarah were a united front of simmering rage. Chloe was bright and bubbly, her camera discreetly rolling as we walked. "I'm so excited for this restaurant," she narrated to her phone. "It's supposed to have the most amazing ocean views." The path to the restaurant skirted the edge of the main infinity pool. The sun was setting, casting a sickeningly beautiful golden light over everything. The private cabanas were draped in white fabric, little temples of luxury. Liam and Sarah were walking 2 steps ahead of us, arm in arm again. Suddenly, they both stopped. They stopped so abruptly I almost ran into them. They stood, frozen, staring at the main cabana. I stepped to the side, my heart pounding a slow, heavy drum. Chloe's camera panned past them. There, sitting on a plush white lounge, was Marcus Thorne. He was reading the Wall Street Journal. Beside him, sipping a glass of champagne, was Eleanor Thorne. Sarah made a small, choking sound. Her hand, which had been so possessively linked with Liam's, dropped to her side. She was chalk white. Liam looked like he had seen a ghost. Before either of them could move, before they could even think to retreat. Eleanor looked up. Her face lit up with a smile of pure, dazzling joy. It was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. "Liam, Sarah," she called out, her voice echoing with perfect, cheerful clarity across the pool. She stood and waved. What a remarkable coincidence. Liam, trapped by a decade of corporate conditioning, could not run. He could not ignore his CEO. He moved forward, a jerky, automatic motion. "Mr. Thorne, Mrs. Thorne, this is a complete surprise." "Isn't it?" Eleanor said, gliding toward us. "Marcus and I are just here for a little anniversary getaway of our own. But then we heard you were here, for your 10th. She beamed at me, as if I were her oldest friend. "We simply cannot let that pass." She turned her brilliant, lethal smile back to Liam and Sarah. "You must join us. We have a private table for our anniversary dinner tonight. 8:30. Please, say you'll come." It was not a request. It was a command, wrapped in diamonds. Liam was trapped. He was standing between his mistress, his wife, his sister-in-law, his CEO, and his CEO's wife. There was no escape. "We, of course, Mrs. Thorne," he stammered, his face slick with a new sweat. "We would be honored." "Wonderful." Eleanor clapped her hands lightly. "Oh, and Maya, darling, and Chloe. You both must come. Of course, it's a celebration." She turned and glided back to her cabana, leaving a smoking crater in the middle of the pool deck. Sarah was staring at the ground, trembling. Liam's entire body was rigid. His plan, his perfect, meticulous plan to discard me, was disintegrating in real time. He turned to me, his eyes dark with a murderous rage. His whisper was a venomous hiss. "What did you do?" I met his gaze, my eyes wide with the innocent, practiced confusion of a perfect wife. I don't know what you mean." "Liam." I smiled. "Happy anniversary." Chloe, her camera held steadily at her hip, had captured every single second. The private table was an ambush, a beautiful, glass-enclosed alcove overlooking the dark, moonlit ocean. It was intimate, elegant, and completely inescapable. The 6 of us sat, a bizarre and toxic tableau. Liam, vibrating with a silent, impotent rage, was seated between me and Sarah. Sarah, who had regained some of her composure, was next to Marcus Thorne. Eleanor sat at the head of the table, a queen presiding over an execution. Across the restaurant, I saw Jen's 2 golfers nursing whiskeys. Their focus was absolute. Chloe, my brilliant sister, set her phone on the table, propped against the floral centerpiece. "Got to capture these memories," she chirped, hitting record. The air was so thick I could barely breathe. Sarah, realizing her plan with Liam was now a liability, pivoted her entire being toward Marcus. She was all hands, touching his forearm, laughing breathlessly at his comments. her leg pressing his under the table. She was trying to secure her primary asset. Liam watched this, his face a mask of curdled jealousy and sheer panic. He was losing his mistress to his boss, right in front of his wife. The appetizers arrived. No one ate. Finally, Eleanor raised her champagne flute. Her smile was radiant. "I would like to propose a toast," she said, her voice a clear silver bell in the heavy silence. "First, to Liam, and to you, Maya, on 10 wonderful years, a true milestone." She looked at me, her eyes sharp and bright. I nodded, lifting my glass. "And," she continued, turning her gaze to Sarah, "a second, very special toast, to Seraphina." Sarah visibly brightened, her ego surging. She thought she was being celebrated. She truly believed she had won. "To your incredible, astonishing rise at Ethelred, Sarah," Eleanor said, her voice smooth as silk. "I don't think any of us have ever seen anything quite like it." Sarah beamed, her smile a flash of predatory triumph. "Thank you, Eleanor. That means so much. I've just been working so hard." "Oh, we know," Eleanor said, her own smile tightening. She set her glass down. "But unfortunately, that brings us to a small scheduling matter. That emergency board meeting, the one for tonight, it was moved up." She glanced at her watch. "In fact, it started 5 minutes ago. Via Zoom. Marcus, darling." She looked at her husband with cold, feigned surprise. "Aren't you supposed to be leading it?" Marcus's face, which had been puffed with pride at Sarah's attention, deflated. What meeting my assistant said that was next week. What's the agenda?" "I think," I said, my voice cutting through his bluster. "They're discussing this." All 6 heads turned to me. I placed my burner phone on the table, right next to Chloe's. I pressed play. The audio was pristine. Jen's work was flawless. Sarah's voice, confident and mocking, filled the air. "It's perfect. After we get Maya's money and you finally get Marcus's job, we can go public. Liam, he'll be ruined. But who cares?" Liam's face went white. He stared at Sarah, his mouth open. You were going for his job." Before Sarah could even react, I pressed another button. A new audio file. Sarah's voice again, but this time it was a low, seductive coo. "Liam is just too stupid to realize we're using his wife's money to fund the new account. He's a fool. Once he takes the fall for the fraud, you and I will have everything. Marcus, he'll be in jail, and we'll be in St. Bart's." A single strangled gasp. It came from Liam and Marcus at the same time. They both stared at Seraphina, their faces identical masks of horror and disbelief. Sarah's face was no longer white. It was the color of ash. As I said, Eleanor spoke into the sudden ringing void. "The board meeting is happening now. They are currently reviewing the full wire transfer records from the Innovent merger, the creation of your SS Capital Fund, and these recordings." She looked at her husband, her voice devoid of all emotion. "They are voting, as we speak, to terminate both of you. For cause: gross malfeasance, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. The full file has already been sent to the Securities and Exchange Commission." Sarah did not scream. She did not cry. She lunged. Her chair flew backward, crashing onto the marble floor as she made a desperate, animalistic bolt for the exit. She didn't get 5 feet. Jen's 2 men stood up, blocking the narrow exit from the alcove. They were large, immovable, and looked profoundly bored. She was trapped. Liam didn't move. He just turned his head, very slowly, to look at me. His eyes were wide, empty, and pathetic. He looked like a child who had just seen a ghost. "Maya," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Maya, what did you do?" I stood up. I looked down at him, at this man who had tried to systematically destroy me for his own convenience. You were right, Liam, I said, my voice perfectly steady. I shouldn't make things weird. I unclasped the Cartier bracelet, the glittering, cold circle of diamonds he had given me as a parting gift. I held it up, letting it catch the light. Happy anniversary, darling. I dropped the bracelet into his full glass of champagne. It landed with a soft, final clink, the bubbles fizzing angrily around the stones. Our prenup, I said. Clause 12B, the honesty bond. You can have your lawyer read it to you, the one who told you it was antiquated. Chloe stood up, her face a mask of cold satisfaction. She slid a thick manila envelope across the table. It stopped directly in front of his plate. Those, I said, are the divorce papers, and that is a court order, effective immediately, freezing every single joint asset we have, pending the results of the fraud investigation. You won't be able to access a single dollar. I turned to Eleanor, who was watching the scene with the detached interest of a theater critic. Thank you for joining my anniversary dinner, Mrs. Thorne. She raised her glass to me, a thin, approving smile on her lips. Happy anniversary. Maya, I suspect you have a very bright future. I nodded. I turned, and Chloe and I walked out of the alcove, past the two security guards holding a silently weeping Seraphina, past a catatonic Marcus Thorne, and past my husband, who was just staring, broken, at a fortune in diamonds drowning in his champagne. We left the restaurant, and we did not look back, while Jen's cameras rolled, capturing every last, beautiful, devastating second of the wreckage. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know where you are listening from, so please drop a comment below, share your thoughts, and let's connect. Don't forget to subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it extra support by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this story.